Kalen had always been my constant. My emergency contact. My late-night distraction. My emotional anchor. He was the first person I called when I got my first camera, when I won my first photography award, when I broke up with someone for the first time. He was there. Always. Unfailingly. I never once stopped to ask myself what I was to him. But before I continue with the rest of the story, kindly do me a little favor. Please hit the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to comment your favorite part of the story below. Now, let's get back to the gist. Maybe it was because I assumed I knew. I always had this feeling that Kalen was just there. Like the house I grew up in, the one that always stood at the corner of Oak and 3rd, unchanging, steady, reliable. I thought, how could he not love me? I'm the person who's been in his life for so long, the one he calls when things fall apart, the one who holds his secrets. I never questioned it. But then, of course, there were the late nights. The calls when the world felt too heavy to carry. The moments where Kalen's voice on the other end of the line was the only thing that could calm the storm in my chest. Marcellus, he'd say, and his voice always had this soothing, quiet power that made everything feel manageable. His voice, it was home. It was where I went when I needed something stable, something to anchor me. Those calls usually came after Declan and I had fought. Nothing serious, just the typical disagreements that came with being in a relationship. Miscommunications, differences in expectations, me not being available enough, him being too distant. It was frustrating, but it was normal, right? Relationships have their ups and downs. But it never felt like it was going anywhere, even though I desperately wanted it to. Marcy, you're too hard on yourself, Kalen would say. He always called me Marcy. It used to make me smile, especially when I was down, because it reminded me of the younger days when we were still kids running around the neighborhood with no care in the world. You're a good guy and you deserve someone who sees that. Someone who appreciates you. It was almost too easy to believe him. Too easy to hear those words, especially when Declan couldn't see the things Kalen did. When Declan didn't understand how much of me was hidden beneath the surface, how much I gave in a relationship, how much I tried to give to him. And yet, I found myself frustrated, lonely, questioning myself more than I ever had before. But Kalen? Kalen was always steady. He was never too distant, never too unavailable. He was always the first one to check in. Always the one who knew the right words to say, the one who could make me laugh at just the right moment when the weight of everything felt too much. It was easy to lean on him, to forget that sometimes when we were talking late at night, something would flicker in my mind, a small, nagging thought that wouldn't quite go away. Why did Kalen always seem so available? Why was he so ready to step in every time things felt rocky with Declan? There were times when I'd look at him and see something more than the friendship I thought I had with him. But I pushed those thoughts away, chalked them up to the vulnerability of our late-night talks. Kalen had always been my friend. My best friend. I trusted him more than anyone else. And when Declan started pulling away, when the arguments started getting more frequent and his messages started getting colder, Kalen was there. He was always there. Marcy, listen to me, Kalen said one night after I'd spent over an hour ranting about how Declan couldn't communicate. I was sitting on my bed, phone pressed to my ear, staring at nothing in particular. You're not the problem. Declan is. I knew he was trying to help, trying to ease the burden I was carrying. But there was something in his voice that night that didn't sit right with me. It wasn't just the usual concern. It was deeper. More intense. A kind of desperation that made me pause like I was hearing something unspoken. You deserve better than someone who doesn't understand you, he continued, his tone low, careful. You deserve someone who sees you, who really sees you, Marcy. His words wrapped around me like a comfort, but in the pit of my stomach, there was an uncomfortable twist. Was I hearing something else there? Was it possible that Kalen was seeing me in a way that no friend should? That his loyalty, his care, was wrapped up in something more than friendship? I pushed it away. I told myself it was just the stress of the situation. Just me reading into things too much. But then the sabotage started. The late-night messages from unknown numbers. The rumors that somehow made their way back to me, the ones about Declan's other interests and his secret life. They were things that didn't line up with what I knew about him. But in the heat of the moment, with all my doubts, I began to question everything. Every little thing about Declan seemed suspicious. Every text, every missed call, every odd behavior was now something to be analyzed. It was Kalen who comforted me, who whispered soothing words to calm the anxiety that swirled through my mind. You're just trying to make sense of things, Kaylin told me. You're not crazy. It's not you, it's him. You're not imagining things, Marcy. Something is wrong. But I'm here. I'm always here. I believed him. I believed everything he said. And yet, even as I relied on Kaylin more than ever, something was changing. I was becoming increasingly distant from Declan, and in that distance I began to notice Kaylin more. I began to feel him more. His closeness was more intense now, his touch a little too lingering, his words a little too tender. And every time it happened I pushed it away. I told myself I was just imagining it. I told myself Kaylin's my best friend. That's all he's ever been and all he'll ever be. But deep down, a voice whispered that I wasn't so sure anymore. I didn't know if it was Kaylin's love for me that had been so constant, or if it was the lie he loved me with. It's funny how someone can slip away so quietly, isn't it? One minute, Declan was mine. I could feel him beside me, his presence always warm, always there, grounding me even on the worst of days. And then just like that, he wasn't. It didn't happen all at once. I didn't wake up one morning to an empty space where he used to be. No, it was a slow, almost imperceptible thing. At first, it was the little things. He stopped calling, stopped texting as much. I didn't think much of it. Maybe he was busy with work. Maybe he just needed space. I told myself that. I had to. Because if I let myself think about it too much, then the truth might slip through the cracks. And I didn't want that. I didn't want to admit that something was wrong, that the man I thought I was building a life with was already pulling away. But then came the nights that used to be ours. When Declan and I would curl up on the couch with a bottle of wine, just talking about nothing and everything. When we'd fall asleep in each other's arms, tangled in the sheets, secure in our little bubble. But now those nights were empty. He was too tired, too distant, too something. I remember the first time I noticed it for sure. It was late, past midnight, the kind of time when everything feels heavier, when the weight of the day presses on you like a thick fog. I was lying in bed, scrolling through old photos, trying to ignore the knot in my stomach when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a message from Declan. I'm at work late. Don't wait up. We'll talk tomorrow. I stared at the screen for a while, wondering if I was reading it right. We always talked before bed. It wasn't just a routine, it was a habit, a connection. But now it felt like he was shutting me out. And I didn't know why. That's when the doubts began to creep in little by little. Had I done something wrong? Was I too needy? Too clingy? Maybe I had pushed him away. Maybe it was my fault. The next day I tried to call him, but he didn't pick up. I left a message and then another and another. No response. It wasn't until that night that I saw him again. We were supposed to go out for dinner, but when he showed up at my apartment, it was different. His eyes were tired, like he hadn't slept in days, and there was something off about his energy, something colder, more distant. He wasn't the man I'd been laughing with only weeks ago. You okay? I asked, trying to keep my voice light, though I could feel the worry building in my chest. He nodded, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. Yeah, just stressed. You know how it is. I wanted to press him, to ask him what was really going on, but I didn't. I was too scared of the answer. So, instead, I smiled back, a little too wide, and we went out for dinner, the silence between us eating away at the space where comfort once was. The thing is, I never asked the right questions. Not then. I should have asked him what was wrong. I should have pushed him, demanded to know why he was pulling away. But I didn't. Because I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to face the reality that something might be wrong with us. That something might be broken beyond repair. I wasn't ready to lose him. But Kaylin? Kaylin always knew just what to say. Always knew how to smooth over the jagged edges in my mind. He was my rock, the one who helped me put the pieces together. Every time Declan's silence became unbearable, Kaylin would call. Every time I felt lost and unsure, Kaylin's voice would pull me back to the shore. You're just overthinking it, Marcy, he'd tell me, his voice calm and steady just like always. Maybe he's just going through something. You're not the problem. He always reassured me and I believed him. After all, Kaylin knew me better than anyone else. He had to. He'd been with me through everything, the highs, the lows, the confusion. He had been the one constant in my life. But as Declan's absence grew more noticeable, Kaylin's presence seemed to grow more necessary. His calls became longer, his visits more frequent. and I never questioned it. Not once. "Kaylin, I just don't know what to do anymore," I admitted one night, my voice barely above a whisper as I paced around my apartment. "He's shutting me out. I'm doing everything I can, but he's just pulling away." "I know you're frustrated," Kaylin said, his voice soothing, but there was an edge to it. A quiet urgency. "But listen to me, Marcy. You deserve someone who isn't going to make you feel like this. Someone who sees you. Who wants you." It wasn't the first time he'd said something like that. He'd been saying it for years in different ways. But now it felt like something different. Like he was pushing me further from Declan with every word, with every touch. I didn't see it at the time, but looking back, I can see it now. Kaylin wasn't just being supportive. He was driving a wedge between me and Declan. And I let him. I let him because every time I felt the distance grow, Kaylin was there to close the gap, to fill the space Declan left behind. I didn't want to admit it, but I felt a comfort in Kaylin that I couldn't deny. And maybe that's what Kaylin wanted all along. Maybe that's what he'd been waiting for. His chance to be the one I leaned on when everything else fell apart. I never realized that the more Declan pulled away, the more Kaylin stepped in. And maybe, just maybe, that was the plan all along. But one day I found messages. Not gonna lie, I always thought betrayal would feel like a slap. Sharp, loud, undeniable. But when I found those messages, it felt more like drowning in lukewarm water. No shock. No scream. Just a slow, sinking realization that everything around me was warped and weighted with silence. It happened by accident. I wasn't snooping. I was searching for an old photo on my laptop, the one of Declan and me from that rainy weekend in Oban. Him in my jacket, us laughing under a red umbrella. I never found the photo. What I found instead was a folder titled Backups. Just backups. The kind of thing you ignore. I didn't. Inside were message screenshots. Texts mostly. From a number that wasn't saved under any name, but had Declan's cadence, Declan's timing, Declan's voice. Except they weren't from him. Not really. Some were written to me from Declan, accusing me of being distant, flirtatious, unfaithful. Others were sent to Declan, warning him about me. As if I were some manipulative monster stringing two people along. Like I was the liar in all of this. And the worst part? The messages had just enough truth in them to be believable. They referenced real moments, conversations I'd had with Kaylin, things I'd told him in confidence. How would anyone else have known those things? My hands were shaking when I showed Kaylin. I couldn't speak at first, just pointed at the screen like it might explode. He leaned in, brows furrowed in perfectly practiced concern. "What the hell is this?" "I thought they were from Declan," I said, my voice barely there. "But he never sent these. And I never sent the ones that went to him. Someone's pretending to be us." Kaylin didn't flinch. Not once. He scrolled through the messages like they were articles in a morning paper. "Jesus, this is twisted. Who would do this?" That's when I knew. Because I didn't ask who. I asked why. Because part of me already knew who. But I didn't say it. I didn't dare. Instead, I watched Kaylin straighten up, jaw tense, eyes a little too unreadable for someone supposedly shocked. He clicked the window closed and turned to me. "I'll look into it," he said. Just like that. No questions. No confusion. No fury. Just calm, calculated control. I told myself he was just trying to stay level-headed. That maybe he didn't want to alarm me. But deep down, the knot in my gut tightened. Because he hadn't asked where I found the messages. Or when. Or how. Because he already knew. I told myself I was being paranoid. That I was seeing things that weren't there. But then he reached over and put his hand on mine, steady, warm, reassuring, and whispered, "We'll figure this out, okay? I've got you." And that's when the betrayal began to bloom. Not as fire, but as frost. Because he was still lying. Still playing the role. Still protecting the lie he loved me with. And I let him. I wanted to let him. Because I wasn't ready to face the truth. That the person I trusted most had been the one feeding the fire that burned everything down. The night Declan left for good, I collapsed in Kaylin's arms. I don't even remember how I got to his flat. I just remember the sharp air, the buzz of the doorbell, and Kaylin pulling me into his chest like he'd been waiting for that exact moment. I broke down before I even made it to his couch. Cried like something inside me had cracked open and everything warm was spilling out. I don't get it, I kept repeating. I don't understand how it all went so wrong. Kalen just held me. Tighter than usual. His chin rested on the top of my head like it belonged there. You deserve someone who sees you, he murmured. All of you. And maybe it was the tears or the way his voice softened like velvet wrapped around a knife, but for a second I felt safe. I let myself believe he meant it like a friend. Like someone who loved me enough to pick up the shattered pieces Declan left behind. But now, looking back, I realized I wasn't crying over just Declan. I was crying over the version of myself that believed love was safe in the hands of others. Kalen made tea. He always did that, like warmth in a mug could fix grief. I watched him from the edge of the sofa, my hoodie sleeves soaked, my chest still hiccuping from the last sob. He placed the cup in my hands, then sat beside me, thigh against thigh. He didn't deserve you, he said quietly. I told you, didn't I? Months ago. I said he'd break you. I blinked. Yeah, you did. At the time, I thought he was just being protective. The best friend warning me about the guy who didn't always text back, who never came to my exhibits, who forgot my birthday once and didn't understand why it gutted me. Kalen had always been sharper than me when it came to people. I trusted that. What I didn't see, what I refused to see, was the hunger behind his concern. How every warning wasn't just protection. It was prediction. And maybe even construction. He didn't pull me apart. Not with claws. But with whispers. With well-placed doubts. With sympathy that doubled as sabotage. He let me cry that night. Let me shake in his arms while he whispered that I'd be okay. That I was better off. That maybe, just maybe, the universe was pushing me toward someone who already saw me. I'm right here, he said, his hand brushing mine. I didn't pull away. And I should have. Not because I knew what he'd done, but because deep down I could feel something shift. The lines between comfort and desire, between friendship and something heavier, blur like a photograph smeared by rain. I told myself I was vulnerable. That he was just being kind. That this was nothing but the soft ache of loneliness being soothed. But when I woke up the next morning with Kalen asleep on the couch beside me, my hand still in his, one undeniable truth wrapped itself around my chest like wire. Declan hadn't broken me. Kalen had started the cracking. It was supposed to be a quiet night. Just drinks, laughter, and silence where the pain used to live. Kalen had made us cocktails, too sweet, too strong, the kind that burned slower than they hit. I was on my second glass when he dozed off on the couch, mouth slightly open, hoodie half-zipped, like nothing in the world could touch him. I should have left. I should have tucked a blanket around him and gone home. But something gnawed at me. A sick sort of curiosity, the kind you feel when your gut whispers something's wrong, and you finally decide to listen. His laptop was open on the coffee table, glowing softly, unattended. At first I just meant to close it. But then I saw the folder. It was titled M. Just that one letter. My letter. My throat dried. I hesitated. Then I clicked. Inside was a mess of neatly organized subfolders. Dates, times, names. A digital archive of my relationship. Photos of me and Declan at events Kalen hadn't even attended. Screenshots of texts between me and Declan. Screenshots of Declan's messages, ones I'd never even seen. Emails that had mysteriously gone unanswered. I scrolled, heart pounding. And then I found them, the fabricated texts. Sent from a dummy number with Declan's name saved. Entire conversations written by Kalen, sent to me. Carefully worded lies that made Declan seem indifferent, cold, cruel. Worse, there were messages sent to Declan too. From a fake account pretending to be me. Things I never said. Jealous, clingy, manipulative. He played us both. Puppeteer in the shadows. I slapped the laptop shut like it had burned me. Kalen stirred on the couch but didn't wake. His chest rose and fell with the peace of someone who didn't think they'd ever be caught. My own chest was on fire. All this time I thought I was unlucky. I thought Declan had changed, or that maybe I'd done something to drive him away. But no, my heartbreak wasn't a coincidence. It was curated, deliberate, designed. By him. The worst part? He did it out of love. Not hatred. Not revenge. Not malice. But a twisted, possessive, suffocating kind of love that wanted me close by any means necessary. I stood over him then, watching his sleeping form, and I felt like a stranger in my own life. Like everything I'd leaned on, Every word of comfort, every shoulder offered, had been dipped in poison. He whispered to me through grief, held me in his lies, loved me with a hand that first reached out to break what wasn't his. I slipped my shoes on, didn't even grab my coat. The night air bit into my skin as I walked out, heart hammering in betrayal. The sky didn't cry for me, neither did I. But something inside me, something soft and young and stupid, died on that walk home. I didn't sleep. I paced my apartment like it was too small for the rage in my bones. Every time I sat, my hands shook. Every time I stood, my knees wobbled. I didn't cry. Not properly. I just kept thinking about the folder, the carefully labeled betrayal, and how love could look so much like war when twisted the wrong way. The next morning he showed up. Kalen didn't knock like someone guilty. He knocked like someone who had every right to be there. I opened the door. He didn't look surprised to see the storm in my eyes. Maybe he'd been waiting for it. I figured, he said softly. Come in, I heard myself say. We sat across from each other. Same living room where we'd watched movies, fought over snacks, laughed until 2 a.m. The same room where I once told him he was the most constant thing in my life. How bitter the irony tasted now. He pulled something from his jacket. A folded piece of paper, creased, worn like it had been carried too long in too many pockets. I wrote this 3 years ago, he said, eyes fixed on the paper. But you were with Declan by then. And I. You what? I snapped. Decided to destroy everything because I didn't choose you? He looked up finally. His eyes weren't ashamed. Just tired. Wounded in that slow, self-inflicted kind of way. I gave up waiting for you to see me, he whispered. You were never going to choose me, Mark. So I made sure you had no one else to choose. There it was. The truth, ugly and raw and laid bare in the morning light. I took the letter from his hand. It trembled slightly in mine as I unfolded it. It wasn't long. Just a page. But every word hit like a bruise. You laugh when you're scared. You pace when you're about to cry. You always make tea and never drink it. You hold everyone but let no one hold you. I know these things. I know you. And if I can't have you honestly, I'll settle for proximity. Even if it hurts. Even if it ruins me. I dropped the letter onto the floor like it might bleed. You loved me, I said, breath shallow. And you punished me for not loving you back. He nodded. Slowly. Like he'd been rehearsing that nod for months. I didn't know how to let go, he said. So I ruined everything else. My mouth opened, then closed. There were no words for that kind of confession. No dictionary kind enough to explain what it feels like to be loved like a target. I don't hate you, I said finally. It surprised both of us. He blinked. But I don't trust you. And I don't know if I ever will again. He stood. Not in anger. Not in defeat. Just acceptance. The kind that comes when you realize you've burned the only bridge that mattered. Goodbye, Marcellus. He left without looking back. The letter lay on the floor, a ghost in ink. I picked it up again, read it once more, and for the first time since it all fell apart, I cried. Not for Declan. Not even for Kalen. But for myself. For the boy who believed loyalty always meant love. For the man who now knew better. I told myself I wouldn't see him again. That the letter was the end. That no amount of history could undo what he did. But love, real, twisted, gut-deep love, doesn't always obey logic. Sometimes it shows up like muscle memory. Like addiction. Like a wound you keep scratching just to feel something again. I saw him again a week later. It was raining. Of course it was. The kind of cinematic downpour that makes every decision feel more dramatic than it should be. I hadn't planned to go to his apartment. My feet just took me. Like they still remembered where safe used to be. He opened the door. Shirtless. Damp hair. That look in his eyes like he'd been waiting on the other side every day since. We didn't speak. I stepped inside. He let me. And then everything inside me, rage, grief, want, erupted. I shoved him. Hard. He barely moved. Just looked at me with those calm, maddening eyes. I hit him. What? Open palm. My hand stung. His jaw tightened. You broke me, I spat. He didn't answer. Didn't defend. Just stood there, letting me throw the weight of what he'd done. I hit him again, fist this time, but my knees buckled after. And then I kissed him. God help me, I kissed him. It wasn't soft. It wasn't sweet. It was the kind of kiss that tasted like blood and heartbreak and old secrets. He kissed me back like he'd been starving for it, and I hated that I responded. When I finally pulled away, I couldn't look at him. My chest heaved, heart thudding like it wanted out of me. I hate you, I whispered. He wrapped his arms around me anyway, pulled me in, let me collapse. I didn't want comfort, but I didn't stop him. I cried into his bare shoulder, every sob another crack in whatever was left of my pride. His hand found my hair, gentle, familiar, infuriatingly tender. And somewhere between breathless exhaustion and aching confusion, I fell asleep. In his arms. In the arms of the man who destroyed my last love just to be my only one. I wish I could say that moment gave me clarity. But the truth? All it gave me was silence and a new kind of shame. He made me breakfast the next morning. Like we hadn't unraveled everything the night before. Like the truth wasn't still sitting on the kitchen table with the crumbs and cold eggs. He moved around his small kitchen in that calm, infuriating way of his, quiet, like he didn't want to scare the moment. He handed me coffee just the way I liked it. I took it. I drank it. Because routine is harder to break than trust. He didn't speak until I sat down. Stay. Just that. One word. So quiet I almost pretended not to hear it. But I did. I can't unknow what you did, Kaylin, I said, staring at the black swirl in my mug instead of at him. I don't even know how to look at you without thinking of how you orchestrated my heartbreak. I know, he said. But I'm not asking you to forget. I'm asking you to remember everything else too. I finally looked up. He looked like he hadn't slept, eyes raw, voice hoarse like saying it cost him. I loved you, Mark, he went on, voice cracking like glass underfoot. Long before Declan. Long before you ever even kissed anyone. I was yours in ways you never asked me to be. And I hated watching you fall for him knowing I could have been better. So I did something awful. I broke what was never mine. Silence. Honesty sounds heavier when it finally arrives. And now you want me to just be with you? I asked, half laughing, half crying. After all that? Like it's some twisted consolation prize? He flinched. No. I want you to choose me. Honestly. Fully. Not because he's gone. Not because I'm convenient. Because you feel something too. That's when I said it. Maybe I do. The words barely left my lips before the air changed. He froze. Eyes wide. Vulnerability caught between disbelief and hope. Say it again, he whispered. I shook my head, tears threatening again. No. Not until I'm sure. Because maybe I did love him. In some deep, repressed corner of me where loyalty and affection had twisted into something unspoken for too long. Maybe I had always loved him, but I'd never let myself know. Not fully. Not the way he wanted. I need time, I said. Kaylin nodded. Take it. But don't lie to yourself the way I did. He stepped closer. Brushed his fingers against mine. Tentative, reverent. I want you, he said. But only if you can want me. Not the version of me you think I should be. The real one. Flawed. Selfish. Human. I nodded barely. Then left. Because love, honestly, is the only kind that counts. But I wasn't ready to give it. Not yet. We didn't speak for 7 days. Not one word. Not even a breath over the phone. I needed the silence. I needed to see if my heart still beat when he wasn't near it. Then he texted me. Drive with me? No promises. No pressure. Just 4 words. Like old times. I said yes. We drove without music. The rain tapped gently against the windshield like it knew how delicate everything was. Kaylin didn't reach for my hand and I didn't offer it. He just kept his eyes on the road, like looking at me would shatter what thin thread we were hanging from. The lake was quiet. Gray. Honest. I stood at the edge, soaked to my skin. Let the water drag the noise out of me. He joined me a few minutes later, hands buried deep in his coat pockets. You didn't have to come, he said. I know. Then why did you? I shrugged. Because something in me wanted to stop hurting. And maybe that starts with forgiving you. He turned surprised. Just like that? No. Not just like that. I paused, then turned to face him. I forgive you, Kalen. Not because you earned it, but because I want peace more than I want revenge. His shoulders slumped. Not in defeat, but in release. Like he'd been holding his breath for years. You have no idea what that means, he whispered. I think I do. He reached for my hand then. I let him take it. And something shifted, quietly, tenderly. Not a reset. Not a return. A new beginning in the ruins of something broken. We didn't kiss. We just stood there in the rain, fingers laced, grief shared. And somehow in that soaked silence, love began. 2 years later, we don't tell people how we started. Just how we stayed. We laugh more now. We cry less. He still wakes up sometimes with guilt clouding his eyes. And I still flinch when certain memories sneak up on me. But we talk. We heal. We love. Love isn't perfect. It doesn't always start clean. Sometimes it begins at the end of something else, when there's nothing left but choice. He chose me in a twisted, desperate way. And I chose him back, slowly, deliberately. Because real love, true love, means seeing the cracks, and choosing the house anyway.